I'm not touching that with a 60-foot pole. Next caller.
We opened on the him particles looking for their next victim. This turned out to be a mangaka, though not this dude who looks like he inked his own goatee, but rather this beta, as they put it. Understandably, after all that abuse, he tried to break on his own and gave his draft to a publisher, and I honestly wouldn't be surprised if this were an accurate depiction of how most of these meetings go.
全く売れる匂いがしないな。こんな漫画でよく持ち込みなんて
And this is why Weekly Shonen Jump has been in decline. Well, that and them supposedly getting rid of some of their raunchier stuff. Boo. Also, how dare this putz not appreciate a good Osamu Tezuka cosplayer? Then again, considering that this mangaka is voiced by Wataru Takagi, who also played the sushi monster from earlier in the season, I can't help but think about another real-life mangaka that he portrayed.
やっぱな。アニメになったってヘッポコ実験じゃない?
And I guess the him particles recognized Rikto's talents, so they possessed his sketchbook. And eventually, you'll get an anime adaptation directed by some weirdo Lupin III cosplayer in an afro. God, I love Excel Saga. But yeah, he used Rikto to create monsters by sketching them. So basically, we were getting recreators about a decade early, though thankfully with a lot less magical girl abuse, as our heroines managed to deal with his creations rather easily, as both the knockoff Zilla and aliens were total glass cannons. This was possibly a result of the artist's lack of confidence in his work, so him pulled out his usual Faustian tactics and convinced him to try again to make something comparable to the girls, which he took quite literally. So basically, they're dealing with a derivative of a derivative. I would say that's kind of crazy and no career would be that lazy, but who am I kidding? It's the norm these days. But yeah, the KO Powerpuffs were drawn in the style of Hirohiko Araki, aka the creator of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, with even Miyako's double looking like a certain protagonist. Coincidentally, Wataru Takagi would also end up playing Okoyasu. However, on top of these quote-unquote girls also being total glass cannons, they suffered from the greatest weakness of them all: tropes.
必殺技は打てないよ。可愛すぎて。あの絵には合わないもん。
An episode with some very strict rules and also some meta commentary. I'm gonna guess Isamu Murayama? Nailed it. But yeah, because Rikto was playing more towards shonen manga tropes, it made the knockoff Powerpuffs incompatible with the more traditional magical girl power sets, with the exception of Kaoru, who, yeah, is a bit more like a shonen protagonist in a skirt. Though if you watch this channel, you might argue there's a little more overlap, but more on that in just a minute. Anyway, while they did end up in a bit of a deadlock, Kaoru managed to defeat her doppelganger thanks to the power of even more tropes. Him then tried to get Rikto to draw him, god these pronouns, but some of the artist's previous creations got in the way, neither that, or maybe he was subconsciously trying not to summon the devil. With that, the girls managed to exorcise the sketchbook with the power of erasers and returned it to its owner. They also noticed that, yeah, he did have legit talent, with Momoko even giving it her seal of approval in a nice bit, reminding us that she is an otaku who appreciates good work. Thus, she could also tell him that his art style and sensibilities were clearly more appealing to the shonen genre than shoujo. This is one of those moments where you really do have to appreciate Murayama's writing, as the story has been kind of subtly exploring the two major genres of manga through this author and his aesthetics. Earlier, we saw that his draft had shoujo manga-esque eyes, suggesting that's what he was going for, and that he likely prefers drawing female protagonists. However, as shown with the KO Powerpuffs, shonen and shoujo manga tropes can't fully blend with one another, as at the end of the day, there'll always be two different genres appealing to two different demographics. That said, there is some middle ground. I mean, aside from that other thing Murayama was writing for at the time, there are plenty of shonen manga and anime with female protagonists or even full-on leads, including one arc of that aforementioned series that's still going to this day. And all of these properties can appeal to just about everyone, really. Just because the two genres are literally called boys and girls respectively, doesn't mean your characters have to perfectly fit into either one. Thus, we ended with Rikto beginning work on a shonen manga of the girls, which kinda makes me wish he would also do the Precure manga. I mean, nothing against the Kamikitas, but come on, if the anime's not gonna give us the action, then the manga at least should. The second half of the episode opened with the principal telling his brother, the mayor, not to deploy the girls as their grades were slipping, which, as always, it's a little surprising to get a little bit of reality in a show like this. But yeah, with them needing to take their finals, some new heroes need to step up, so their kind of sort of father figure volunteered and busted out a new supersuit.
And once again, it's very clear what this is based off of.
Powerpuff, as the name suggests, was an episode where Utonium took on a superhero persona in order to spend more time with his daughters. Allegedly, this episode was based off of a Scholastic book, as well as created as a response to a bunch of fan letters that Craig McCracken had received, demanding that the prof be turned into a superhero too.
The OG episode we got as a result was okay overall, but there are a couple of major issues I have with it that we'll go over as we go through this review.
I will say, I do like the setup, with the girls needing auxiliary heroes at times like this, as well as the profs volunteering to help and allowing them to be more proactive. Sure, it's not as heart-wrenching as the OG prof slowly coming to realize that his time with his superheroine daughters would always be limited, but it's still cool to see them step up. And right off the bat, they would have to prove their worth as Mojo formed an alliance with Fuzzy and the Amoeba Boys to attack the town.
You're gonna do superhero landing. Wait for it. Superhero landing.
Not too surprisingly, for someone with the voice of multiple Optimus Primes, he had a bunch of Super Robot references as a part of his arsenal, including Boss Borat by the looks of it. Granted, it was effective, and hell, I'll take it over the Powerpuff being a cringy helicopter parent. Yeah, one of my biggest issues with the OG episode was Utonium just being such a doting parent that I felt secondhand embarrassment for the girls. Here, while Utonium Z was a bit of an out-of-touch boomer, at least he wasn't embarrassing the girls, and they did make it clear that he was risking his life to help them, so him being a little lame was more than forgivable. At the same time, the Gangrene Gang were trying to sneak into the lab to steal samples of the chemical Z to gain more superpowers.
Don't you also need some junk food to go with that?
However, Ken wasn't going to let them get to it that easily, so he cosplayed as one of Yayoi's designs and held them off with some good old Home Alone traps.
What, no bricks that should actually kill them with one hit?
Eventually, Peach even joined in on the action with his best Bruce Lee cosplay. However, the gang just kept coming, so Ken gave them what they wanted, or at least some close approximation, if you consider Tabasco to be the source of a superpower. I mean, it works for Kirby. But yeah, with that, the three managed to hold down the fort while the girls took their tests.
Well, I'll definitely take y'all over these idiots.
However, in another surprisingly realistic twist, the girls all failed their tests. Yeah, throughout the episode, on top of being distracted by the monster attacks, all three of them relied on games of chance to answer their multiple choice questions.
I swear, this better not have been another convoluted plan by Gentle.
Nah, probably not, considering how the principal managed to keep a really good, creepy eye on them. Fortunately, they were allowed to take makeup exams, and the episode ended with the PPGZ volunteering their services again, which again, I prefer a lot over the OG's resolution. Yeah, while he was cringy, it was a bit of a pity to see a competent hero like the Powerpuff retire as soon as he debuted, after the girls purposely let him get beat up by Mojo. I'd much prefer a story like this, where a B-teen could get their time to rightfully shine.
And in general, this was just a really fun episode throughout, especially if you appreciate more than one genre of anime and manga.
The first story was an entertaining exploration of genres through the eyes of a struggling mangaka. Meanwhile, the second story was another nice recreation of an OG episode, with its own takes suited for the different setting of this anime.
And in both cases, they weren't afraid to let the boys play along with the girls, which is just more fun for everyone.
Interestingly, in spite of both of these stories being written by different writers, Isamu Murayama and Naoki Koga respectively, both ended up exploring themes of the shonen genre. Don't know if it was good planning or just pure coincidence, but either way, they complement each other really well. The The mangaka story was about an artist finding his particular niche, which is something a lot of creators will go through. Then by the end, it became pretty clear that he had a good sense of scenario writing and world building for a shonen story, in spite of initially trying to draft a shoujo manga. He was likely under the preconceived notion that in order to properly debut the superheroines he wanted to draw, he had to stick with the shoujo genre, even though you can't carelessly just mix the two genres together. Thus, he just made a shonen manga with superheroine leads, specifically the girls, and yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if this dude was meant to be a bit of a self-insert of Murayama, considering what else he was writing and would continue to write for. This ironically kind of leads into the latter story, as the current Pretty Cure season also features a male auxiliary and True 6 Ranger in Black Pepper. And again, while the original Powerpuff episode had some exceptional strengths over this, like the silent intro as Utonium was slowly drifting away from his daughters, it also did have a bit of a mean-spirited conclusion to reset the status quo. I wouldn't be surprised if this was the result of Craig being a little salty over all of those angry fan letters. And while I don't think the PPBZ will actually be used that much beyond this episode, it is a wholesome and actually kind of realistic outcome for this version of the girls, who do have to worry about SATs unlike their elementary counterparts with no secret identities. Plus, these are all just some fun and insane scenarios across both stories that took full advantage of the show's creative nature. And while of course the boys shouldn't overshadow the girls in these sorts of shows, it doesn't hurt to expand your gender appeals a little more, which is something I'm hoping they do with Delicious Party. We stand with Black Pepper in this house. So overall, this was a very good episode with some surprisingly deeper themes about creativity, but also plenty of stupid fun too.
Next up on the docket, we're going to tackle a pseudo-sequel to something that, yeah, has been a little bit of a long time coming.
Yep, after recent episodes of Delicious Party, I do feel obligated to address the little issue of 6 Rangers as of late. It's mostly going to be a toy duality commentary video, as we are going to be focusing on the current shows, but maybe also expect some guest appearances from other shows. We'll see how the script turns out.
And until then, though, farewell for now, my friends. And you know, after an episode like this, I really want to get my hands on Cybertron Optimus Prime. Still one of the best fights in all of Transformers.